Recently, the U.S. House of Representatives passed a bill that could see TikTok banned in America. If the bill passes in the Senate and is signed into law by Joe Biden, it would force the social media's parent company to sell its controlling stake or be blocked in the U.S. There are many people championing this potential ban, claiming that the reason for it is that TikTok poses a risk to the data of U.S. users, or that it should be banned because it is corrupting the minds of children. Both of those things are true. TikTok does put user data at risk. And there is no doubt that TikTok is a psychological operation designed to influence the minds of young people with destructive ideas. But regardless, TikTok should not be banned. Not because it is good, but because it is the lesser of two evils.
How could it be that Congress should be working hard to devise a means to circumvent that principle, that prevailing principle of the First Amendment, against the use of a particular means of expression by 170 million Americans?
Banning TikTok has nothing to do with protecting user data or safeguarding children's minds. This bill is only about control. Social media shapes and controls the opinions of society. Those who control social media control the narrative. This bill, if it becomes law, will set the precedent for legal censorship and the erosion of First Amendment rights.
Speaker, this is not the first time that restricting speech has been pursued in the interest of national security. In fact, in 5 days' time, next Monday, I'll go to the Supreme Court for the first time I've attended an oral argument in the case of Murphy versus Missouri, the case where agents from the White House and the Department of Justice and other federal agencies embedded themselves with American social media companies to manipulate what could appear on social media, expression by the American people.
What we commonly refer to as freedom of speech is fundamentally the right of individuals to hold and share their opinions without interference, censorship, or penalty from the government. Freedom of speech is the right to hold any opinion of your choosing, express that opinion without fear of retribution, and have that opinion challenged, criticized, or ignored. Benjamin Franklin said, "Freedom of speech is a principal pillar of a free government. When this support is taken away, the constitution of a free society is dissolved, and tyranny is erected on its ruins." John Milton highlighted the value of free speech when he said, "Give me the liberty to know, to utter, and to argue freely according to conscience, above all liberties." Milton understood that without freedom of speech, no other rights or protections would be possible, because free speech is the gatekeeper of all other freedoms. Without freedom of speech, you cannot object when any of your other rights are infringed. ACLU says that, "History teaches that the first target of government repression is never the last. If we do not come to the defense of the free speech rights of the most unpopular among us, even if their views are antithetical to the very freedom the First Amendment stands for, then no one's liberty will be secure." The moment freedom of speech is taken away, all other freedoms are put at risk. As Benjamin Franklin eloquently stated, "Whoever would overthrow the liberty of a nation must begin by subduing the freeness of speech." Subduing the freeness of speech is the first step in overthrowing liberty, because all other freedoms, including political freedom, are dependent on free speech. You cannot force people into a totalitarian system until you have removed their ability to fight back. History has taught us this lesson repeatedly, yet we seem determined to ignore it. As Alan Amenhire warns, it all starts with suppression of a few freedoms, and before you know it, you can't speak without permission from the authorities. And then finally you wake up, and you know what? It is too late. In the US, the First Amendment guarantees freedom of speech, but that right is now constantly under attack. And even if there is no legal penalty in place, there are social penalties that prohibit people from speaking freely. Not only does the Constitution guarantee free speech, but in 1948, the United Nations recognized freedom of speech as a human right in the International Declaration of Human Rights. That states, "Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference, and to seek, receive and impart information and ideas through any media, and regardless of frontiers." The UN Declaration does not guarantee the right to freedom of expression on the condition that nobody will be offended by your opinion. When it comes to speech being legally free, freedom of speech is a binary right. You either have it or you don't. There is no partly free, just like there is no partly captive. In other words, either you are free to speak, or you are not. James Thomas Kesterson Jr. explained this when he said, "My definition of freedom of speech is as follows: the right to speak freely anywhere, at any time, about any subject, without the fear of harm, reprimand, punishment, or other. Until this is true, we have no freedom of speech. So, unless we want to find ourselves in a position where our freedom is completely eroded, we need to accept the fact that people saying things we don't like is just one of the things we need to accept if we want to live in a free society. Freedom of speech is the most fundamental right the state should protect. Without this protection, all other rights are compromised. The state should not impose restrictions on speech that does not cause actual harm to others, nor attempt to disguise laws intended to stifle criticism as laws against harmful speech. There are only two ways to organize a society. The first is through force, where the strong dominate the weak and enforce their will. The second is through discourse, where issues are debated and every opinion is able to be heard. In other words, without free speech, society can only be ordered through force or the threat of force. A free society is impossible without freedom of speech. As Harry S. Truman warned, once a government is committed to the principle of silencing the voice of opposition, it has only one way to go, and that is down the path of increasingly repressive measures until it becomes a source of terror to all its citizens and creates a country where everyone lives in fear. Free speech is the only barrier there is between freedom and oppression. And even if you hate TikTok, you cannot believe in free speech only for the speech you like. I hate TikTok, and I believe parents should be paying much more attention to what their children watch and regulating their activity online. But that is the job of parents, not the government. The government should never be given the power to erode the right to freedom of speech.
The proper relationship between government and citizen in the United States is that the citizen decides what to be exposed to and what ideologies to embrace and consider, and is always free to engage in expression, including across international boundaries. That remains the prevailing constitutional law today.
Or as George Washington warned us, if freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led, like sheep to the slaughter. That is all I have for today. Please like and subscribe. And please support this channel by downloading my book, The Ministry of Truth, How Propaganda Fuels the Culture War. And join me again tomorrow as we learn how to survive woke land together. Until then, this is Ethan Quinn saying, stay free.